Yes. And can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, let us know. Let us know if you can hear us. Let us know where you are joining us from. And we are so glad you are here. Okay, it sounds like you can hear us. Okay, a little tip about Crowdcast before we get started. If for any reason we freeze on you, the best thing to do is refresh your browser from your end. That usually clears it up. If not, kind of go out and come back in. If there's an issue with us, then we'll try to handle it on our end. I'll try to handle it, but we'll be fine. So welcome to our August Empower panel called Answering Your Body's Call. We are so glad to be gathered here today to talk about this. Our Empower panels are an opportunity for women to come together from all over the country to discuss topics that don't usually get a lot of airtime. Things that people have questions about. We pull a lot of it from the Facebook group, things that people would like to talk about more and hear about more. And we have such a wealth of knowledge and experience within our 911 Wonder Woman group that it's been so great to pull people together on these different topics. So I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor, DataMark, who makes all of this possible and allows us to bring this to everyone free of cost. You'll be able to watch this on demand on Crowdcast. It'll just be hanging out there for good. So this particular topic is about chronic illness, disease, chronic pain in 911. We know this is a profession that has a lot of stress and a lot of demands on you physically and mentally. And for people who do suffer from chronic illness, disease, or pain, it can be even harder, and the job can exacerbate it and even cause it sometimes, or cause it to activate. So we're going to talk about a couple different experiences that we have all had with chronic disease or illness. Please feel free to comment in the comment section. I'm going to kind of step back here after the introduction and I'll try to monitor. There's also an ask a question feature at the bottom there of your screen. You can click on that and submit questions that way. We'll try to get to all of them because we want this to be a discussion and we want to be able to answer your questions. So I'm going to start off. We're all going to introduce ourselves, give you a little bit of our story. My name is Sarah Weston. I'm the founder and executive director of 911 Wonder Women. I'm also a consultant for Next Gen 911 systems. And my journey with chronic illness started actually when I was pregnant with my second child. I started getting horrible vertigo attacks and throwing up, and I just thought it was being pregnant. And I was like, okay, just gotta get through this pregnancy and everything will be fine. Well, then when my little guy was about 3 months old, it happened again, and I was like, oh crap, this is something else. So I was diagnosed with Meniere's disease about 4.5 years ago. Now, it is a disease of the very inner ear. It causes ringing in the ear, it causes hearing loss, and it causes the vertigo spells. So if you're ever around me when it's noisy, and I know a lot of you in the comments have experienced me in person, and you're talking to me and you're standing on my left side, a lot of times I have to go like this. What did you say? And kind of throw my good ear at you, because especially like at conferences when there's a lot of background noise, I have a very hard time hearing. I love using headphones like this because if we're on a Zoom call, I can sit there like this because, speakers only go so loud. So the hearing loss is a thing that really causes me issues day to day. But the worst part is definitely the vertigo. I was at Navigator this past April and I was leaving the venue, getting ready to go home. And I saw Sarah I I saw Sarah in the lobby on the way out. And if you ever been to a conference, it's very hectic. It's very stressful. You don't get a lot of sleep. You're usually eating different things. For me, I was drinking more than I usually do. And I was having a conversation with Sarah, and then all of a sudden it was like someone punched me in the face. I fell to the ground. Sarah broke my fall. And I knew what it was immediately. It's just the world kind of spins around you and there's nothing you can do. You just have to wait for it to pass. And sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's 3 hours, sometimes it's an entire day. And I just never know. So anyway, I'm so glad Sarah was there and people were kind of swarming around me and saying, call an ambulance. And I was like, no, I'm fine. I just need to lay here on this cold floor for like 10 minutes. I was like, just give me a moment. And it was just, that was probably, it's not the first time that happened to me in public, but it was, it just felt like a very public place because it was so open. There were so many people that I knew there. And my first thought, you guys, well, I had two thoughts. One, I was like, maybe I should just go on the ambulance so I can get some rest, which we all know that being on an ambulance is not restful. So, but my second thought was, oh my God, what if someone saw me? Like, what if someone saw me, which is silly. Like, why was I worried about people seeing me or finding me out? I was like, I hope no one finds out that I did this, because it's a human thing. And it's a thing that so many of us experience. So when we talk about it and we share our stories, that's when we can get rid of that shame that we feel about things that we cannot necessarily control, and about doing the things that we need to do to help ourselves. And because sometimes that can feel shameful as well. So that is the reason we are here today. This is going to be a 2-part series. So whatever we don't finish up here today, we're going to be doing next month as well. So keep that in mind as you're sending in questions. I know Sarah has a poll that she's constructed to ask you all questions kind of in between the two. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Pagel, let her introduce herself, and she's going to be moderating the rest of the panel. So thank you, Sarah.
My pleasure. Oh, I'm so excited to be with you, wonderful women. It's such a privilege to use my voice and to use my lane, as I like to refer to it, in a way that hopefully brings healing and restoration and ultimately vitality back to the front lines, because I am, as a friend of mine likes to call me, a retired dispatcher. So I did spend a couple of years in the radio room. So I really do understand the price of this job. And prior to dispatch, I was out in the field as a law enforcement officer. So I really, really viscerally understand the toll that this work and this chronic stressed state that we're in takes on our bodies and our minds, truly. So I'm really excited to be with you guys today. And Sarah, I'm really thankful that I was in that space for you in that moment. I felt honored to be protective of you in that moment, because you are such a treasure and you're so really very important in this community. So to be a support to you in that moment really was a privilege to me. So thank you for trusting me in that moment. I know it was kind of like you didn't really have a choice in that moment, because it was going to happen whether you wanted it to or not. And so, but it really was a privilege to be with you in that vulnerable space. And that's kind of what I do. I do a lot of that one-on-one and individual and group kind of creating a space where it's safe to talk about what's actually happening in your body. And so I'm really excited to get to know these lovely ladies here in this panel and kind of unpack a little bit about what some of the stressors look like in our bodies when we work the front lines. And so I'm definitely here to answer any questions, and I'm really excited to hear these lovely ladies' stories. So Mary, why don't we start with you, because you're right here on my screen. So well, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know a little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
Okay. My name's Mary Shireman, or Meredith Shireman is my legal name. Most everybody calls me Mary, so you may see me as either way. I started dispatching in 1991 as a fire dispatcher at a very small local fire department, and I was there for 2 years part-time, and then I switched over to Willamette Valley Communications Center, which is in Salem, Oregon, in the middle of the Willamette Valley. We dispatch 29 agencies across 3 counties, police, fire, and medical, handling the 911s as well as the non-emergency calls. I went from an agency that I think I went for 2 weeks without dispatching a call once, to an agency that if you went an hour without a 911 call, it was almost unheard of, even in the middle of the night. So it was a huge, huge change. I was there for 28 years. 20 years ago, I became a shift supervisor, so I ran the floor anywhere from 9 to 14 people, depending on our staffing. Those were optimum staffing levels, and of course, we weren't there very often. And I retired in April after 30 years altogether. And so I'm still kind of switching gears and figuring out who I am. Regarding chronic issues, I started having migraines when I was 3 or 4 years old, and I'd have them pretty routinely. As I hit puberty, they became worse, definitely related to my cycle. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis when I was about 12 to 14, somewhere in there, which was unheard of in the early 80s. It was very, very rare. Now everybody has it. The treatment has not changed. In spite of going from nobody has this to everybody has this, it's still here. Throw some medication at it. I also was diagnosed about the same time with polycystic ovary syndrome, which probably had a huge impact on the migraines, because they seem to, like I said, fit with my cycle. And that led to anemia, severe anemia throughout my 20s and 30s. And then into my 40s, my body switched again, and I started having high blood pressure out of the blue. So basically a malignant hypertension is what it was called. So a different type of headache. And I suspect that a lot of women deal with really difficult cycles every month, and we just deal with it. There were days that it feels like you're being torn in half. The headaches would be so bad that I couldn't see out of one eye, and I would slur my words. And that would be the point where I'd be like, okay, I probably need to go home because my callers are going to have trouble hearing me and understanding me. More than once, I had to call for somebody to come pick me up to take me home because I couldn't drive because I waited too long. But, I didn't want to not stay, yet I knew there were times that I couldn't. And I'd always, my lines in the sand would be if I'm vomiting or if I'm running a fever. I cross those lines more times than I can count, just because, there's a sense of guilt that goes with taking care of yourself. And it's tough because being a supervisor, I understand the feeling of, oh, wow, now I'm short-staffed, and that sense of responsibility. Yet at the same time, I recognize that if I can't see out of one eye and I can't speak clearly, I can't help my callers. And you have to find that line, and it's very difficult to find and be comfortable with because you keep wanting to push yourself. The anemia aspect, that went on for years, and it makes you dizzy, it makes you cold, you can't think. And I can remember driving into work one time, and I was crossing the bridge, and I realized I wasn't in the lane I wanted to be in. I knew it wasn't the lane I wanted to be in, and I could not figure out how to get to the correct lane. And I thought, this is crazy. I need to be at the doctor's, not. And she actually wanted to put me in the hospital by the time I contacted her because my iron levels were so low at that point. She had got my blood work back about that time. And of course, being who we are, no, I'm not going to go to the hospital. Tell me how you want me to treat this. So, but, and
we are a stubborn bunch.
A tough situation.
Yes.
We are. We don't want to let down our coworkers, but at the same time, we let ourselves down by not recognizing what we need. And I think it's changing. I've watched it change. We're a little more responsive to the needs of people versus the suck it up buttercup attitude, which is what we had for years. I mentioned yesterday when we were chatting a little bit, a couple of us, and I also have anxiety and depression, which came probably very slowly throughout my 40s. And I discovered that when I retired, the anxiety is almost completely gone. So I know the anxiety was, it was job related. And I think it had to do with that sense of responsibility of, I have to run this shift no matter how many people I have, no matter how many people have called out sick or how short staffed we are. Doesn't matter how I feel. And there are days, you know, now I look back and I think, how did I even function? And the doctor's quote, which we've all heard, is you did it because you had to. You didn't have another choice. And
It's true.
we do so many things because we have to. And that's, you know, I recognize that COVID knocked me down pretty hard. I had it more than once, and it left me with a lot of side effects. I have asthma now that I didn't have before, you know, things like that. And I realized, you know, I am eligible to retire, and it's time for me to retire. My body says it's time for me to retire. And I miss it. And I'm still not figuring out who I am yet. It's still early days, but there are moments that I really, really miss it. But I know that this is what I needed to do. And not everybody's to the point where they can walk away from it. And that's the hard part.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, Mary. That's Sarah, this to you and to Jana and to Dominique, I know that you guys are going to share your journey too. And it really takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable and to share something that makes you feel vulnerable, right? When our health is compromised and we can't show up the way that we want to, the way we know we're capable of, it's a scary thing. And then to then share that with people is an even scarier thing. So you all get a A+ and a high five today for sharing, for being vulnerable and showing up to this community and leading in this community and showing how to do this. So leading by example. So thanks for sharing that, Mary. And man, you just touched on a lot of things that, Sarah, I think we should maybe do a conversation about the female cycle, since we are 9-1 Wonder Woman, and how our cycle is impacted by stress, which is definitely a topic that we can explore. That probably is going to be relevant in this community. And you talked about that suck it up buttercup mentality. And that is something, I was raised by a boomer and a builder. So my dad was born in 50. I'm sorry, my mom was born in 50 and my dad was born in 41. And so that was very much the mentality, right? There wasn't space to share it, to sit in your feelings or to sit in weakness, quote unquote, right? There just wasn't. Like you had to get up and pick yourself up by the bootstraps and keep going. And I think that it's a really incredible thing that the people who have gone before us in the industry and outside of the industry have kind of paved the way for us to be having a conversation like this, where it's like, hey, we can validate each other that there are stressors in this job, and the stressors that are in this job do have this chronic impact on our health. And so thanks for sharing. And I love that I'm hopeful that this conversation will be the start of really shifting. And Sarah, what you've done with 9-1 Wonder Woman has been shifting the conversation away from suck it up buttercup to, hey, let's just be supportive and tap into this feminine energy that really is organically supportive. And we don't have to be like the boys. We're not the boys. And they bring something beautiful to the table as well. And so, but we can bring what we offer to the table and create an environment where we can have these conversations and create a grace-filled environment.
Yes, Sarah, having the conversation, that is what this is all about. I feel like some of these things were taboo, like talking about our cycles. Like, what crap is that? Like, you know,
exactly.
We can have babies, guys. Woohoo!
The boys can't do that.
My 4-year-old still thinks he hatched out of an egg, but we can discuss that later. But that's what these are for. Having the conversation, realizing that you're not alone, and moving forward from this.
Absolutely. And I do want to, I joke about, we can have babies, and infertility is definitely something that is a real thing too. So I don't want to dismiss the pain and the realness of what happens in that space. And that's definitely a part of the conversation. You know, if we do end up kind of exploring this cycle, this female cycle within the context of 911, and how chronic stress actually really does impact our body's ability to reproduce. Because
Right.
when you're in fight or flight, your body doesn't care about making babies, period.
Mhm.
So that's definitely another component of it. But I do want to validate that space too. You know, I can laugh about, you know, oh, we can make babies, and we can. And there is, you know, that is a real hurt in the community as well. So, all right, Miss Jana, you are in the next square on my space. So we'd love to hear from you and some of your stories. So tell us who you are, where you are, what your background is, and your health
Sure,
journey.
you guys don't even know where I'm at. So I am in Columbus. I'm in Columbus,
Go
Ohio.
Ohio!
Yes, my neighbors. So I actually went to the Ohio State University. I actually started out as a political science major, started working at the police department when I was 19 years old, and worked there as a part-time dispatcher and a part-time officer, and just loved it. My dad's an officer too, so I already kind of had that draw to the field, and I don't know how I didn't scare them away from hiring me, but they didn't. And so I got hired on full-time when I graduated and worked as a full-time dispatcher for 6 years for the Ohio State University Public Safety, and then for 8 years as a supervisor. And then I began doing the training, the trainer, all the things. We were severely understaffed, as is normal, it seems. And so I guess the good thing with a smaller department like that does have a little bit of money is that I could do all the things. So I took on a lot, probably more than I should have now looking back. And so I got pregnant with my son in 2010. And again, you don't recognize the things that are happening to your body that are maybe not as normal pieces of pregnancy. So you just assume things are just, okay, something's kind of weird, you know, like that'll go away. Somehow got rid of heartburn for 2 years after I had my kid too, which was kind of nice. But about 2012, I was like, you know, it feels like I've had, this is so, and this is me getting over it. So this is me throwing myself in the deep end because I'm still embarrassed by this. I thought I had a urinary tract infection for like 2 years. You know, I was like, something is not right. I can't shake this. I can't get rid of it. I was abused as a child, so I always had issues with urinary tract infections, and that's a whole other background there. But so finally went to the doctor and couldn't answer the right questions, you know, so he sent me to a specialist. Then he sent me to a specialist. Then he sent me to a specialist. I ended up at the Cleveland Clinic because things just kind of kept deteriorating. I actually, at one point at work, one evening, I was literally on my knees in the dispatch center trying to type in a run and like over my keyboard. And I was like, I can't, I have to go. Someone has to take me. And my officers took me to the emergency room. And I was in such bad shape. I was there for 3 days. They had me on IV fluids. My white cell counts were out of control. They thought I had cancer at one point. But it turns out I have interstitial cystitis. So interstitial cystitis is a disease where your bladder does not grow the lining that it needs to protect itself from itself. So it's constantly thinks that it's under attack. It swells almost as if like an allergic reaction would. So I look like I'm pregnant a lot of the times when I am having a reaction. But then it also can contract when I'm not ready for it to contract. So I had problems, like I had to give up sports. In sports, I played sports through college. You know, I was recruited for school to play soccer. So to have to give that up, that was huge. That was an outlet for me. I got to hit other people. You know,
That's fantastic, by the way. Got to hit other people.
Yeah, exactly. That vestibular stimulation. I needed that to actually like fight people. I am a fighter. It's really bad. That's that Latin blood in me, you know, like
Love it.
And
that's completing the stress cycle, right?
So yoga, I ended up actually doing yoga too, but even yoga would get bad some days because the leaking would be incredible. And I found an amazing doctor with the Cleveland Clinic, and God bless him because he still works with me because I'm pretty young as far as the diagnosis age. Like every time I go to the doctor's office, it's me and like 50 and 60-year-olds. When I was first diagnosed, I was in my late 20s. So I mean, that was horrendously depressing. And ended up going for the elective surgery so I wouldn't pee myself. Like if I ever like sneezed, coughed, not only that, went upstairs too fast, or even pretended like I could play soccer or do even you have a small child, especially one like mine who's like a little crackhead, you can't stop moving, you know? And I'm like, I'm sitting here wetting my pants along with my 2-year-old. This is cool, great. And so we kind of managed to, we did the elective bladder sling surgery, and it did help for a little bit. But again, these are all patches. Interstitial cystitis is actually considered a fairly newly diagnosed disease. So they're still learning as we're going along. I'm actually on cancer treatment drugs because they don't quite know what else to do. I guess the bonus of that is my hair is usually really thick and I have broke nails and everything really fast because it helps you regrow your cells. So they're trying to recreate that lining in my bladder. I mean, the bad part of it is it makes you very sick. And and of course, the trigger for any flare you have is stress. When I started seeing my specialist at the Cleveland Clinic, he asked me what I did for work, and I told him, he goes, "You got to quit. I'm sorry, it's time to leave." And I can't imagine doing anything different. You know, I'm one of those weirdos who loves their job. I don't want to leave what I do. So we kind of persevered a little bit through that. Within the last 2 years, I've actually received my secondary diagnosis of fibromyalgia. So I started noticing I was kind of getting a little stiff in the morning, and I thought, oh, it's the IC is evolving. It's becoming more of a problem. And my sides started hurting, my back, my shoulders, my knees, my Achilles is the thing. Again, I was finally being able to get back to soccer and do yoga, and then my Achilles locked up. And I was like, I am shuffling like a penguin for the first hour or two. I'm awake every day. And so, as you know, or you might not know, there is no way to directly test for fibromyalgia. It's a process of elimination. So it was about a whole another 2 years before they were like, all right, so let you get you on this regimen now too. So it's this balance of pharmaceuticals, yoga, walking, running, like trying to get back into the soccer a little more. I'm honestly still a little nervous. It makes me nervous just because of how bad it was for me for a while. It's like I literally, this is too much, I know, had pee like running down my leg at one point. Like, and I was like, I can never do this again, ever. This is horrifying. And so I'm trying to be better and get back out there now that I've had the surgery, now that we have the medication, because I'm not going to have skin better if I don't get back out there and try it. So, but yeah, so that's where we're at now. The anxiety, depression, it comes with it, you know, and that's hard. All these things that you expect out of life that you now can't do. It's like you constantly have to remind yourself, like, okay, that's my plan, and that's fine. Kind of pivoting a little bit, you know. But yeah, it's the days that are bad where it's really painful between the fibro, between the other part with the bladder is when it does contract, it pushes urine back up in your kidneys. So my kidney function is not fabulous either. And so again, trying to push water and be good and take care of yourself in every way you can just to get around this level. Yeah, exactly. I'm glad it's not easy, but I was told if you use a straw, it actually makes you more likely to drink water.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, so I've been trying to be good and incorporate my little metal straws too. So anyway, that's my foray into my chronic illness world there. So happy to answer anything else as it comes up later on.
Thanks so much for sharing, John. I mean, it's really crappy to be told that you have to quit something you love because your body is giving you information that you don't necessarily know what to do with, and you don't know what your body is asking you for, right? You don't know necessarily what it needs to keep going so that you can live the life that you want to live and do the things that you want to do. And just quitting a crazy stressful job, that isn't really an option. It isn't really an option. I was when I started working with my own functional health practitioner in 2016, I was a juvenile probation officer for Hamilton County, which houses Cincinnati. And I was basically told to quit my job because it was too stressful. And I was like, I can't afford to quit my job. 2, I love what I do. So that's not really an option. Can you help me work around that? And he did, and he was wonderful. And I credit him and the work that we did together as really saving my own life. So you can, I think that's my point, is like, there is hope, because I see Heidi, you put that comment in there, just quit. Like that's not an option. And there is hope that when you understand what your body, the information your body is giving you, when you understand what it needs and what it's asking you for, you can repair, you can support, and you can continue to heal and to live the life that you want to live. And yes, some changes probably need to be made, because we don't just get sick. Like,
Right.
we're not born typically sick, right? And so it takes time to get super sick, and it takes time to get super well. So, but yeah, I just really kind of picked up on that being told to quit is really frustrating. And then the anxiety and depression that comes with a chronic illness, that is very real. And when you, and the frustration and the disappointment and all of the emotion that comes with not being able to do the things you love, like soccer, like you're an athlete and you're being told you have to stop being an athlete because your body is not doing something that it needs to be doing. And so it's compromising, and Western medicine doesn't have the answers for you. So, well, you just have to quit. Again, you just have to quit. Like, that's not fair, right? And life happens on life's terms, for sure, hands down. There's no doubt about that. But just to peel back those layers and get back to a place of like hope, when you are in that place of sadness and depression or discouragement, it's a journey. It's a choice too. Like, you have to choose to make some changes, for sure. So thank you for sharing, Jonna. I just so appreciate you and your vibrant. All right, Miss Dominique, saving the best for last. Not that you're not all awesome, because you are, but Dominique, I'd like to have you introduce yourself and hear more about who you are and your journey to where you are today and what's happened in your health space.
Absolutely. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad you tuned in. Our health is truly our wealth. I started dispatching January 10th, 2005, in a jurisdiction in Central Virginia. And prior to that, years before, in the late 90s, I started having some issues where I was like exhausted. I felt like my legs would try to give out periodically. It wouldn't make sense. We went to a specialist. They drew some lab work. And in the late 90s, they said, hey, we know that you have a high ANA, which is an anti-nuclear antibody, which is an indicator that you will probably have some sort of autoimmune disease, but we don't know what it is yet. So your diagnosis for now is undifferentiated connective tissue disorder, whatever that means. Yeah.
Cool story, bro.
Right. So fast forward several years later, I'm dispatching, training. I was one of those people that came in January, and by June I was already released from call taking, promoted to fire dispatcher, and I was serving as a primary trainer for new hires. Like you said, Jonna, taking on a little bit more than we probably should have, but we don't know these things, right? If we're capable, we're able, and we're willing, because we are in servant roles, we do what we need to do. A few years later, 2008, I was on a trip to New York with my son for his 13th birthday, and I had this horrible pain in my elbow. And I knew, like, I hadn't hit my elbow on anything. I hadn't done anything weird. I said, this is probably linking back to the connective tissue disorder. Let me go back to see the specialist. And that trip was over the summer in July. And in September, I was officially diagnosed with lupus. The deal with autoimmune diseases is a lot of times when you have those high ANAs, they tell you we need a series of symptoms to kind of connect before we can give you a full diagnosis. And that was the place that I had finally reached, where the labs added up, the symptoms added up, and they could see that the disease has now progressed into systemic lupus. Mine is systemic lupus nephritis, which means that it attacks my kidneys primarily. I mean, it affects my entire body, but the kidneys are the main source of attack. In the earlier phases of my diagnosis, it's a large learning curve, because somebody tells you have a chronic illness and you don't know what to expect. I was working through flare-ups that I should have been hospitalized for. I would go to work at night, my hands, my wrists, everything would be swollen. I'm typing, I'm working 12 hours, I'm working sometimes 16 hours because we needed overtime coverage and so forth. And thank God for my one radio partner who had magic hands. And so in between calls, she would try to massage me enough that I could type some more. Just really not being knowledgeable that I was in a full-blown lupus flare-up. But this is where I learned something critical, and that is you have to establish a really strong relationship and communication with your doctor. Being an active part of your care plan is how you gain success in managing chronic illness. So once I became educated and understood how to listen to my body, know when those little small twinges are the early indicators that it's time to rest. It's time to maybe have I been hydrating properly? Maybe it's time to adjust the anti-inflammatory drugs. So I take prednisone every day of my life, which is a steroid. But I'm on a micro dose. But when I'm in the midst of a flare-up, if I feel it coming, my doctors have taught me how to elevate or increase those doses to keep it managed. But I'll tell you, even with that education, I too had the doctor tell me, you probably need to quit this job. It's not the right combination for you, given the fact that you have lupus. I also have Hashimoto's. I also am anemic, severely anemic, to the point that I've had iron infusions before. I do take chemotherapy medication every week. I give myself injections every week. There's a lot to living with lupus and living with a chronic illness. And even knowing that, and even hearing the doctor tell me the things that I needed to do to manage and mitigate, because I was in this role as a public servant, sometimes I was hearing my body, but I was ignoring it because, hey, we need coverage today. Hey, we need you to come in on your day off. Hey, we need you to stay a little late. Hey, we really need you to do so forth and so on. And I'll tell you just one story because I don't want this to happen to anybody else on this call. I remember calling in one day. I felt terrible. And it just so happened, I worked night shift. You had to call out by 5 o'clock. And just before 5 o'clock, it began to snow. And you all know, calling out during a snowstorm is like a federal offense, right? What? I'm like, I'm not calling out because it's snowing. I'm calling out because I'm not well. And of course I got well, you're going to need a doctor's note and so forth and so on. So I said, fine, I have a doctor's note. Went to get, to the doctor to give me all of these medications. I'm on an inhaler, everything. But because of the guilt that was placed upon me in that moment, I went to work the next day. And I remember trying to climb the stairs from the parking garage to the dispatch center. And by the time I hit the top of the stairs, I literally could not breathe. And they kept saying, oh, you should go home. You should go home. I was like, it's no way I'm going home. You already made a big deal about me being out yesterday. I'm here now. Just leave me alone. Let me put on my headset and do my job. By the time I made it home that day, it was a Friday evening. I was so sick that I never made it upstairs to my bedroom for the weekend. I ended up sleeping on the couch for 2 days. Monday, I went to the hospital. I was going to go to the doctor's office, but it was so hard to get dressed that I said, I'm not going to the doctor's office. I'm going straight to the emergency room. And when I did, I was getting my vital signs taken, and a physician came darting from the back, I guess because they have the monitor on the screen in the back room. And she said, where's this patient? my vital signs were so off the rails. They kept saying, "How did you get here?" And I said, "I drove." They were like, "Who drove you?" I said, "No, I drove." They were like, "No." They rushed me to room 1 in the emergency room, which is really reserved for trauma and most critical patients, right?
Mm-hmm.
I ended up being diagnosed with bilateral pneumonia,
Wow.
packed in ice for a week,
Wow.
hospitalized, finally get discharged, and I ended up out of work for 6 weeks trying to recover, because when your body is attacked, when you have an autoimmune disease, you are immunocompromised. So the common cold could take you down.
Mm-hmm.
The fact is that I had a cold. It was developing into pneumonia. I didn't stay home, take time to rest, let the medication or the steroids that they had given me kick in. And I ended up hospitalized and then out of work for 6 weeks. So my point that I want to leave with everybody today is our job requires us to prioritize incidents every single day, multiple times a day. We decide who gets help first and what resources they get. My charge to you is know when it's time to prioritize your health. You make this decision every day for other people. We have to get to a place where we're comfortable making that decision for ourselves. And particular to the leadership who is listening right now, please also listen to your employees when they're telling you, "Hey, I'm not feeling well," or they do disclose to you that they have an illness, and you're not helping to advocate for them, making sure that they get appropriate break time, maximizing the number of days that you're allowing them to sign up for overtime or be contacted to come in for overtime. Because we do carry that burden of, well, if they call in, they must really need help. Or if they've called and you say, "No, I can't come," and then they call you back an hour later and say, "Please, nobody will come." 99% of the women on this call are going to go.
We're going to go.
Yes. Right? And so we cannot allow that to continue to be the way. We as leadership and as co-workers in the space, we need to be looking at how well we're taking care of ourselves and how well we're taking care of each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, such words of wisdom. And thank you so much, Dominique, for sharing your story. And there's a lot of power in the story of you being in the hospital and being where your body was so compromised to the point where you could not physically move forward. And yeah, like just Ricardo, what you just said, if you don't listen to your body will make you listen.
That's right.
And it will compromise you to the point where you can't do what you love anymore. And I'm loving all these comments on the side. This is great. And yeah, you said a couple things that really kind of struck with me. The first thing I wanted to touch on is being an active part of your care plan. And how, that was one of the things as we were prepping for this Empower panel, we were talking about the importance of advocating for yourself, and that when you advocate for yourself, that can create disruption for other people, and how that's their responsibility. It's not yours.
Right.
Your responsibility is to take care of the container that you have, that you live in 24/7, 365. And that facilitates you to be able to do what you love to do. And so if you don't take care of your container, if you don't advocate for yourself, then you end up being compromised. And then because of that, you can potentially compromise others because of the nature of the work we do. And so, yeah, when you said becoming an active part of your care plan, that's so important. And there was another comment in here about the natural Western philosophy of just like putting pharmaceuticals into it. And, what I do now, I am a functional health practitioner, and I take my experience in the field and being law enforcement and dispatching. And before that, I was a therapist. So I use it all. I use all my experience to help people on the front lines, like move forward and heal in their own journey. But in that whole process, I totally lost my train of thought. Isn't that so
I'll
fun?
I'll
I
help
was
you out.
trying to fake it too. Like,
You're talking
yeah,
about
lost
Western
it.
medicine and
Western-
if you look at that
Western
as
medicine.
a holistic approach.
Western medicine. Thank you.
Yes,
That's what it was. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I love having people behind you that have your back. But yeah, no, Western medicine, bless them. They, if I, like Dominique, just like you were saying, you had pneumonia. Your body was in crisis. It was in acute critical crisis mode. Like you were not going to be okay. You needed those experts, right? And I use this this analogy a lot in my trainings that I do. But it's when you so the Western medicine is kind of like firefighters, right?
right.
When your house is on fire, you call 911. We tell the firefighters where to go, and they show up with their resources, right? Because you don't have the training, the skills, the equipment, the knowledge to put your own fire out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need the experts to do that. And so Western medicine is really kind of like that, where they are trained in a very specific way to handle the crisis, right? But they're really, just like firefighters, those firefighters do not prevent your fire.
That's
and
right.
as much as we may want them to, because some of them are still really hot, we may want them to stick around after the fact to help you clean up. But they don't do that.
I can speak to that actually quite a bit, because part of being an active part of my care plan was understanding that the drugs that are used to treat lupus are harsh chemicals. And to me, that was not an option. I was a person who, if I had to be holding my eye in my hand to take a Tylenol, right? I didn't believe in pumping medication into my body.
Yeah.
So learning about how to change my diet, how to put in more anti-inflammatory foods, spices, the importance of hydration, eliminating dairy, all of these things, diet-wise, I started to make my lifestyle. The other part, a major change that I made, was learning how many harsh chemicals are in our everyday products. Our
Yes.
lotions and soaps and shampoos and hair dye and all of that. And that actually sent me on my natural hair journey. I used to, relax and color my hair all the time. And I said, well, these are the things that I can eliminate that are exacerbating or adding to my problem. I still need the Western medicine. But if I couple that with some natural changes and reduce the amount of toxins and poisons that I'm putting in my body, then I'm giving myself a better chance and a more fighting chance to have some longevity in this lupus journey. And so now I use only all natural everything, no deodorants with metals or aluminums and so forth. Coconut shea butter or coconut oil only to moisturize my skin. There are a lot of things that we could be doing even before you're diagnosed with an illness. Let me make sure that I'm making sure that this is getting to everyone. Eliminate those things from your life that only hurt you, because they are healthier alternatives.
Absolutely.
So I think that's an important takeaway for everyone here. Don't wait till you're diagnosed with something that you can't get rid of. You can do things that make you healthier and more stress resilient. Right now in your everyday life.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Sorry, Sarah. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was going to ask everyone a question, because each one of you were told to quit, right? And we saw in the comments that is a theme, a common theme. None of y'all quit. So what did you do?
I did, but not because of that.
Well, yes, right. You're still going, whoa. Pull my laptop down. What do you do? What did you do in your center to allow you to keep working, even though they told you to quit? And did you run into any pushback from anyone in your center because of the changes that you had to make?
So yeah,
Let's do it.
definitely had pushback. We happened to be redesigning our center right when I was just initially diagnosed, between the IC and the fibro, actually, not knowing what the fibro was then. So we incorporated the sit stand desks. Like you see, I'm sure anybody who sits beside me or behind me, in a class, they probably think I have like Tourette's or some kind of something where I cannot sit still or hold still, which I do have ADHD, but I can't hold still. And I'm sure I'm a distraction, but it hurts. It hurts to sit still. So I have to keep moving. So asking for that sit stand was great. I know how to do chair yoga very well. I can teach chair yoga. I started doing my own yoga instruction and, kind of informing my coworkers around me, because I tend to overshare with them, or I did at the time. So they knew like why I was being so fidgety, or why I could not hold still, or while I was pacing the room. Like, I'm not trying to distract you. I need this for me. You can join me.
Right.
You can join me if you'd like. That'd be great. And
advocating for yourself.
Yes.
I need to do this for me. You can join me, and I'm still going to do it, even if it makes you uncomfortable, because your discomfort is your responsibility, not mine.
Yep. And so, kind of as being as transparent as I could without, like I said, kind of getting to that embarrassing point, because I still have some embarrassment with actually the full effects of everything. But just so they understood why all of a sudden I was on a diet, why all of a sudden I was having to go to the bathroom a lot, because you can't really hold it when you have IC. I mean, you don't even know what causes IC. Probably holding it too long, in fact, probably doesn't help. And so they were a little more forgiving when I was like, I've got to go now, like right now. So you're back. You're on your own. So that transparency really did help in the end, even though it was a little bit of a hurdle to get over as far as like my ego and my embarrassment.
Yeah, you said overshare, but it's not. That's what, it's not really overshare. It's just letting them know what's going on. But that's how we're trained. That's how we feel. Like, oh, I'm sharing too much. But you're living in the space with your coworkers and doing very, very important work. And it's so important that we all understand each other. And instead of judging, as Sarah put it, to become curious as to, well, why do you have a stand-up desk and I don't, or whatever the case may be.
Yep. And it really comes back to that whole advocating for yourself and being a part of your own care plan, right? And being, when you make that mental shift to putting your body as a priority, it's becoming more acceptable to put your mind and your emotional state as a priority, right? So we're talking a lot about in the community about trauma and the mental and emotional resources that are out there. And we need to continue this conversation about putting our body and our health, our physical health, into kind of that prioritized space. And when you do that and you shift your mindset into, I'm going to do this for me, because this is what I need to do. It isn't about you. It isn't, it's not a dig on you. It isn't about what you are, what you aren't saying, and what you are, what you aren't doing. This is about me taking care of myself so that I can actually show up to work, so that I can be here and be fully present and active in the importance of this position. And and getting curious. And so one of the other things, and I know we're coming close to the end with time, so I want to be honor and respect that timeline. And we are going to continue this conversation next month. So I'm really excited. We're going to, next month, we're going to talk probably a little bit more in depth about what you ladies have done to be successful in your health journey and where you're at today. And I'll spend some time, because what I do every day now is work in this health space, in this physical health space. Heidi, me too. I would love to connect with you, by the way. I would love to connect with all of you, actually, because I love talking about this. It's so important to, bring attention and intentionality to our physical health, because you are your body, and this is the container that you live in 24/7, 365. And when your container is hurting and broken, it's incredibly difficult to be present, to show up, to do this work. And so next month, I think we're going to unpack, I'm going to do a little bit of kind of information sharing, education around what I like to call hidden stressors. And you ladies have already all touched on these. So when I say hidden, I'm referring to, it's an acronym because everything's an acronym, right? So hormones, immune system, digestion, detoxification, energy production, and neurological function. So hidden stressors. So when we have stressors in any one of those vital functions that are hiding, right? Because like mold, Lyme, parasites, candida, all of those types of hidden stressors can hijack your immune system.
Yes.
And Hashimoto's is probably the most diagnosed thing that comes across my path because it's related to your thyroid. Well, your thyroid is the canary in the coal mine. And so if your thyroid's off, that means it's not actually your thyroid that's broken most of the time. It's farther upstream that's causing your thyroid to be stressed. And so if you just deal with the thyroid, if you just like medicate the thyroid, sometimes you need to do that and you don't actually deal with the thing that's causing the stress in the dysfunction, you're only going to continue to go down this hill, and it gets yucky with more and more diagnosis and things of that nature. So next month we're going to dig into hidden stressors a little bit more and talk a little bit more about some actual real practical things that you can do in the radio room to help support your physical health and how to advocate for yourself and do it in a way that honors the system that you work for, honors your colleagues, and honors yourself. So I'm really excited about that. And I do see that we're at 4 o'clock Eastern because I'm in Ohio. Jonna, you and I totally have to be friends in real life. We have to make that happen. But I want to leave you guys with some resources here and now, and then I'll let Sarah kind of wrap us up. But Emily, I know you're in Troy, I believe, which is so fun. We should just have like a 911 Wonder Woman party in Ohio because Ohio is so big. We just should make that happen.
Do that at my parents' house.
Columbus, yes. Erica's in Columbus. I'll just have a big party at my house. I mean, I'm in Cincinnati, so it's not like the most central location. Heidi, you should come down too. I'll be out in Minnesota in November doing a training, so let's just stick with it. Anyways, I have to stop responding to the chats.
It's so hard.
Okay. So a couple resources for you. A shout out to Ricardo in the chat. We are actually going to be talking tomorrow at noon Eastern about this stuff in a little bit more depth. So we're going to be talking about kind of trauma and the body and how the body keeps a score and how there really is this connection between the mind and the body. Whether we want it to be there or not, it's all one container. So we're going to be having a really lively discussion, I'm sure, because Ricardo and I have lively discussions. So definitely check that out if you're able to. And we can connect in that space. Also, I'm going to link in the chat here the health survey that I put together that I would love for you guys to do. And Sarah, I'll kind of leave that for your kind of pushing out to the community, however you do that. Anybody and everybody can take this survey. It's just a way to kind of prep for this next month and to hear from you guys in the community because you guys are who matter. So there's that. And then also, I have recently launched a health and wellness app for first responders. I label it for helpers because it isn't just first responders, but it's mostly driven to support you guys in the community. So you can check that out. It is $15 a month, but you have direct access to me where you can anonymously ask me your questions and I'll respond in a group setting. So nobody knows where the question came from. I'm just putting information out into the community. You'll get a discount on supplements, and then I'll also give you some direction on some good, healthy supplements. And then you can have my ramblings, which I called my blog. That's not published. So it's a resource for you guys out there. And then I'm developing it more and more, putting more and more content out there. And so that's also, I would love to have you guys in that community. And, I do one-on-one health coaching, but it's not always feasible for, and not everybody's ready to do that kind of work where it's like, we're digging in, we're running labs, we're figuring out what's actually going on in your body. And it's not exactly cheap to work with me one-on-one. And so it's worth it, I think, obviously. But it's not exactly something that everyone is in a place to do. But this this app, this health and wellness app, is called Phoenix Vitality, is a really great place for you guys to start moving forward in your health journey, to take an action step, and start kind of heading off some of that before it gets to a chronic illness, before you get to a diagnosis, or, if you have a diagnosis, what do you do now? So some next steps in the natural health space. So I will put my website info in the chat, and then reach out to me. I love connecting with each and every one of you, and I love hearing your stories. I have my own story too, so I love to use my story to empower you to do things like advocate for yourself and make good, healthy decisions for your body. So I'm a resource, and I can't wait for next month. We're going to have a blast, and then check out tomorrow with Within the Trenches. So I think that's what I've got. Back to you, Sarah. You're over there in my computer.
Thank you.
No, wait, this way.
So confusing. Anyway, thank you so much. I want to end with kind of one final question for Mary before we go. So, Mary, you've made it through. You've had a long career. You've made it to retirement. It's time to figure you out. Do you have, related to this topic, is there one piece of advice that helped you the most, or one lesson that you learned the hard way that you want to share with us, related to your health journey in dispatch? Or do you want to think about it and come back next time?
Well, there is one thing that really, really helped me, and it's going to be one of those things that everybody knows it, and we put it off, but just simply going for a walk. That was so huge when I finally, I knew. And at one point I ran. Obviously, I don't run now. But I started when the depression hit so hard, and I was trying to recover from COVID, and I just didn't want to move. I made myself go out and just walk around the block, just one time. And then I did it again, and I did it again. And I got to the point where I was doing about 3 miles on my days off. On my work days, I didn't always go on my work days, but I probably put in around 10 to 12 miles a week. And I got to the point where that made such a difference. And I think logically I knew it would, but I just didn't want to make myself do it. And finally, when I made myself do it, for me, adding podcasts in, oddly enough, the podcast, I wouldn't let myself listen to the next episode unless I was taking a walk.
Yes,
of course,
so
the murder mysteries, of course, And I started with Murder in Oregon because it was a familiar.
That's fun.
I knew people that had been involved in the situation.
Oh my God!
And I was just like, I didn't know all these things. I didn't know, because it had happened right before my career had started, and so peripherally, I worked with several officers that had responded on the call, and I'd heard all the stories, but to hear it actually laid out, it just kept me fascinated, and I wanted to walk. And they were about 40 minutes each, so I'd get a 40-minute walk in.
Nice.
And
that's awesome.
I kept, just finding different podcasts that would keep me going. And again, I would not allow myself to listen to them at any other time other than when I walked. And I was so excited to hear the next one that got me into the habit.
So great. So that is such a great piece of advice. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you to Mary, Jada, and Dominique, and Sarah. We will see you next month. Any questions you want us to answer on the next one, I'll be putting up a post in the Facebook group. So thank you all so much. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.